Chapter 11. Are you going to mop up the spilled coffee, or are you going to wade in it all morning? Mr. Nelson asked, frowning. Oh, sorry. Roxy shook her head hard, trying to clear her mind. She bent down to pick up the jagged pieces of broken white china. I've got to think this out, she told herself. I've got to think very clearly. She had a strong impulse to tell her dad everything, the whole story, from the stupid bet she made with Ursula, to breaking into Lee's house, to the angry fight she overheard in the dark living room. Her father was a lawyer after all. He would have the right advice for her. He would tell her if she should go to the Rocky Shores police or not. Of course she should go to the police, Roxy told herself. But what would happen to her when she confessed to breaking into the house? That's not important, she argued with herself. What's important is that Lee Bloom is a murderer. He murdered that poor, frightened girl, and I heard it. I have to tell the police. I have to. Her frantic thoughts spun through her mind, making her dizzy. She carried a roll of paper towels from the sink, got down on her knees, and started to mop up the spilled coffee. What if Lee saw me? What if he knows it was me who ran out the door? I'm a witness. A witness! Will he come after me next? Who will protect me from him? I'd better just shut up. I'd better not tell anyone. No, I can't keep it all inside. She finished mopping and tossed the wet paper towels in the trash. Dad? She turned to face him. She pressed her back against the kitchen counter and took a deep breath. Dad, I have to tell you something. He had climbed up from the table. Scratching his bare chest, he was nearly to the kitchen door. And I'm going to jog before I start on the briefs, along the Dune Road. Want to join me? Roxy sighed. He hadn't heard her. No, see you later. He disappeared out the door. She didn't know whether to be disappointed or relieved. Glancing out the kitchen window, she could see him doing his stretching exercises. Roxy turned away, trying to decide what to do. Her stomach gnawed at her, but she knew she couldn't eat any breakfast. I'll go talk to Ursula, she decided. Maybe Ursula can help me figure out what to do. Besides, Ursula should know the truth about Lee. She hurried to her room to get her sneakers. As she sat down on the bed to pull them on, she glanced at her dresser top and the flash camera caught her eye. She stared at it for a long moment. The flash went off, Roxy remembered. It went off as I ran past the living room. I must have a snapshot of the two of them together. She swallowed hard. Is it possible, she asked herself, is it possible that I have a picture of the murder taking place? Gripped with excitement, she tied her sneakers with shaky hands. Then she grabbed the camera and carefully rewound the film inside. There is a 1-hour developing store in town, she remembered. Is it open on Sunday? It's got to be. Wrapping the yellow film roll tightly in one hand, she hurried out to her car, a dark blue Honda Civic. She placed the film carefully on the passenger seat, then started up the car. The town of Rocky Shores, with its 2 rows of low white shops and restaurants, was only a 10-minute drive from Roxy's house. But this morning, the drive seemed to take hours. She passed the white clapboard church her mother faithfully attended. The double doors had opened. People were streaming out. Roxy didn't slow down to see her mother. She pulled the car into Main Street. The town was pretty crowded for a Sunday morning. Tourists mostly, Roxy told herself. Not even July, and the summer crowd was already pouring in. She glanced up at the sky, still as dark and gray as her mood. Not much of a beach day. That's why everyone was hanging around town. There were no parking places on the street. She had to pull into the town lot at the other side of the tiny red brick post office. She grabbed the film roll, slammed the car door, and hurried along the street. A crowd of people, young people mostly, in shorts and t-shirts, were lined up outside the cove, waiting to get into the popular little restaurant for Sunday brunch. Roxy thought she heard someone call her name, but she didn't turn around. The 1-hour developing store was in the next block, on the other side of the Book Nook, the tiny bookshop that also sold candles, soap, toys, and souvenirs. She had to push her way past 2 families, talking and laughing, blocking the narrow sidewalk. A car honked. Roxy turned to see a red Pontiac with surfboards tied to the roof. She didn't recognize the teenage boys jammed inside. She crossed the street. The small film developing shop came into view. Was it open? Roxy couldn't tell. Gripping the film roll tightly in her hand, she picked up her pace, and nearly got run over by 2 girls on bikes. Hey, get off the sidewalk, she called to them crossly. They ignored her and pedaled away without looking back. Roxy made her way past the small pick-and-pay market. She kept her eyes straight ahead on the film store. Please be open. Please be open. Hey, Roxy! The familiar voice was right behind her. This time, she couldn't ignore it. She spun around, annoyed. "Oh, hi, Terry." "Roxy, what's up?" His eyes were wide with surprise. He hadn't brushed his red hair. It stood up on one side of his head. He was wearing a faded Ren and Stimpy t-shirt with a long rip down one side, and baggy green shorts that came down to his knees. "Just, doing some errands," Roxy told him. "Where were you last night?" Terry demanded, brushing a blade of grass off her shoulder. "I called you. Pretty late." "Oh, nowhere really. Just out," Roxy replied. That was lame, she told herself, feeling her face grow hot. Why can't I ever be a better liar? With my parents, visiting some people," she added, seeing Terry's suspicious expression. "What were you doing?" she asked, eager to change the subject. "Ray Metzger and I just hung out," Terry replied. Roxy made a face. She didn't like Ray Metzger. She couldn't understand why Terry was always hanging out at Ray's house. Whenever Terry asked her to come join them, she always made an excuse not to go. Terry gazed up at the overcast sky. "Not much of a beach day. Want to go to a movie or something later?" "I don't know," Roxy said, biting her lower lip fretfully. "My family might have plans or something. I'm not sure." Terry narrowed his eyes at her suspiciously. "You okay? You look kind of tense." "No, I'm fine," she lied. "I've got to run, okay?" "Should I call you later?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah, later." Then she turned and hurried toward the film store. The store was open. Roxy dropped off her film. The young woman behind the counter told her to come back in an hour. What should I do to kill an hour? Roxy asked herself, stepping back out onto the crowded street. She began to walk aimlessly, pausing to look in shop windows. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she had skipped breakfast. But the lines at the 2 restaurants in town were too long, and everyone was in groups of 2 or more. She'd feel embarrassed going in by herself. The beach stretched 3 blocks from Main Street, beyond a row of stately old houses, the most expensive in Rocky Shores. Roxy thought maybe she'd go wander on the beach for an hour until her pictures were developed, but the sky was rapidly darkening. Storm clouds hovered low over the storefronts. She didn't want to be caught in the rain on the beach. A pink Cadillac convertible from the 1950s, a huge boat of a car, rolled past filled with laughing teenagers, radio music blaring into the street. Roxy felt bitter as she watched it go by. Those kids are happy and don't have a thing on their minds except partying, she thought. They didn't witness a murder. They don't have to spend their Sunday morning waiting for a photograph of a murder to develop. Feeling sorry for herself, she dropped down on a bench at the curb across from the post office. She slumped down and stared at her sneakers. When she raised her eyes, she saw the payphone at the side of the post office building. Glancing at her watch, she saw she still had 20 minutes to kill. She crossed the street and called Ursula. Mrs. Nordquist answered, sounding rushed and frantic. Roxy asked to speak to Ursula. "I think you'll have to call back, Roxy," Mrs. Nordquist replied. "Dr. Green just gave Ursula some muscle relaxants. For her back? You heard about her back, right?" She didn't wait for Roxy to reply. "Well, the muscle relaxants made her very drowsy. She's half asleep and she's not making any sense at all." "You mean—" Roxy started. "She's all doped up," Mrs. Nordquist interrupted. "She sounds like she's in slow motion, at the wrong speed. I guess it'll help her back, though." "I could come over in a little bit," Roxy offered. "No, we'd better let Ursula sleep," Mrs. Nordquist replied. "Why don't you call her tonight, Roxy? Dr. Green says she'll be better by then." Roxy hung up, feeling disappointed that she didn't get to speak to her friend. She trudged back to the bench and waited for the hour to be up. She tried not to think about Lee and the frightening sounds at his house the night before, but there was no way to force them from her mind. When she finally returned to the developing store, it took the young woman a long time to find the photo envelope. They had been filed under the wrong name. Roxy was practically shaking all over as she paid the woman and took the photos. She carried them outside and leaned against the wall to steady herself. Perspiration ran off her forehead, down her cheeks. "Do I have a snapshot of the 2 of them?" she wondered, pulling open the yellow and white outer envelope. "Do I have a snapshot of the murder?" With a trembling hand, she pulled out the glossy photos and rapidly shuffled through them. Chapter 12. Roxy impatiently flipped past several snapshots of her parents. They had been taken at a backyard barbecue, the first of the summer at the end of May. She also hurried past some pictures of Shauna and Ursula clowning around at Blade Runners, the skating rink at the end of Seabreeze. Her back pressed against the building, Roxy raised the photographs closer to her face as the first one of Lee's room came into view. She studied it for a brief moment, then flipped through 4 others, 5 pictures of his room, all of them very dark, but definitely Lee's room. She recognized the cluttered bookshelves, the posters on the wall, and the model of the boat on the dresser. And the fourth picture? The picture she had accidentally flashed of the living room? She stared hard at it, narrowing her eyes, trying to make it come into focus, trying to figure out exactly what she had captured on film. She shook her head and glumly lowered the stack of photos to her side as she realized she was staring at a snapshot of the ceiling light fixture. "Oh, wow," Roxy muttered under her breath. "A stupid ceiling light. Great shot, Roxy." A light rain started to fall as she returned to her car. She shoved the snapshots into the glove compartment, slammed it, then started up the engine. "Now what?" she asked out loud. She didn't feel like going home. She didn't want to think about Lee and the murdered girl, but she knew she had to think about it. She had to decide if she was going to tell anyone what she had heard or not. It took a while to make her way out of town. The narrow street was backed up with cars. The rain started to come down heavier. Gray steam rose up from the pavement. Without realizing it, Roxy headed the car out onto the dune road. The two-lane road curved past the rocky dunes that jutted along the Sound. She opened her window all the way. The cool raindrops felt good on her shoulder and face. On the other side of the dunes, black and purple in the eerie storm light, the waves washed steadily against the rocky shore. The rainwater began to puddle along the side of the road. The sky grew even darker, dark enough to turn on the headlights. What a gloomy day, Roxy thought, following the curve of the road onto the low hills she knew so well, the hills that led to the area known as Hunter's Dunes. Almost as gloomy as my mood. She slowed the car as the headlights rolled onto a group of people clustered on the grassy dune. The twin lights played over them like spotlights. Through the clicking windshield wipers, Roxy saw dark uniformed police officers, paramedics in white lab coats, and several spectators in shorts and t-shirts huddled under black umbrellas. She pulled the car to the grass and stared through the rain-spattered windshield. Up ahead stood several police cruisers, their lights flashing red, then black against the dark sky. Roxy pushed open a car door and stepped out. Red, black. The flashing lights held her as if in a trance, summoned her, pulled her to the grassy dune. Red, black. She didn't notice the rain that fell steadily on her shoulders, that drenched her face. She moved forward as if in a dark, flashing dream. Red, black. She joined the crowd of silent spectators. She saw their grim, tight-lipped faces. She heard low, muffled sobs. And then her eyes fell on the dark form stretched out on the rain-soaked grass. A bag. A black plastic bag. Like a garbage bag, she thought. A long, slender garbage bag. Roxy's stomach heaved as she realized she was staring down at a body bag. The girl's body bag. She could see only sections of it. Uniformed men and women were hunched over it, studying the corpse, blocking the view. "How long have the police been here?" she heard someone behind her murmur. "Little more than an hour," was the whispered reply. "The rain is slowing down their work." Roxy clapped a hand over her mouth and waited for her stomach to settle. She shut her eyes tight, but the sight of the dark, lumpy body bag, rainwater trickling off its shiny surface, refused to go away. A sudden thought made her open her eyes. This isn't the girl. The thought made Roxy's heart pound. She brushed rainwater from her eyebrows and stepped closer, trying to get a better view. "You can't go over there," a man's low voice said from somewhere behind her. Roxy took another step closer. This isn't the girl. The thought was cheering her, helping her rise above the gloomy scene on the other side of the dark dune. Why did I automatically think the murdered girl was the same girl in Lee's house? Roxy asked herself. I jumped to a stupid conclusion. I let my imagination run away with me. There's no reason to think this was the same girl. It could be any girl. Just because Lee was having a fight with a girl doesn't mean he killed her. I must have been crazy, Roxy assured herself. Crazy. Still in a trance, she stepped through the tall, wet grass. Her knees and legs were soaked with cold rainwater. She moved up close behind the dark uniformed police officers, huddled over the body in the bag. "You can't go over there, miss," someone called. Ignoring the warning, she stepped between the police officers and stared down through the falling rain, squinted hard, stared through the red, then black, tried to see the dead girl, tried to see her face. Then the body started to move, and Roxy opened her mouth in a heart-stopping scream of horror. Chapter 13. Strong hands grabbed Roxy's shoulders. Miss, please," a man's voice urged. Did you know her? Roxy heard a woman's hushed question. Did you know the dead girl? Roxy stared straight ahead at the moving corpse. It took her a long while to realize that the body hadn't moved on its own. The police were tugging on the black plastic body bag. Miss, are you okay? The hands lightened their grasp on her shoulder. Yes, I guess. Did you know her? The woman insisted. Do you know who she is? Roxy shivered and turned away. In the rain, the faces of the spectators were a dreamlike blur. They huddled under dark umbrellas like black clouds right over their heads. They didn't blink. They stared straight ahead, stared at the black body bag collecting shiny raindrops on the grass. Roxy took a step back, then another. Her sneakers sank into the wet, marshy ground. Her wet hair was matted against her soaked forehead. They were closing up the body bag, zipping it from the bottom. Why did I think she moved? Roxy asked herself. Why do I feel so strange, so totally, terribly strange? And then one pale arm slid out from the top of the bag, one pale, lifeless arm, and as the men struggled to close the bag up in the pouring rain, the dead girl's head slid out with the arm, and Roxy saw the girl's hair tumble out, saw the head of blonde ringlets, and started to scream again. Dad? Sorry to bother you. Roxy poked her head in through the den door. Mr. Nelson glanced up from the paper spread out on the desk. Roxy, I told you I have 2 different briefs to work on. Is this important? He asked sternly. Roxy nodded. Yes, I think. Very. Her father sighed and swept both hands back through his thick brown hair. Isn't it something you could discuss with your mother? Roxy couldn't keep the hurt from her face. I really need to talk to you, Dad. Sorry if I'm taking away from your precious briefs, she replied shrilly. He frowned and motioned for her to sit down in the leather chair in front of the desk. Roxy walked over to the chair, but decided to stand behind it. She gripped the chair back tensely with both hands. Mr. Nelson tossed his pen onto the pile of papers. Well, shoot. Roxy cleared her throat. Did you hear about the girl that was murdered last night? The one they found in Hunter's Dunes? Her father blinked. She could see he hadn't been expecting such a serious topic. Yes, he replied quietly, staring hard into her eyes. I ran into Ernie Cooper when I was jogging this morning. He told me about it. Did you know her? Roxy shook her head. She gripped the chair back tighter. No, she didn't go to Jackson. At least, I never saw her there. But, well, she hesitated. Then she decided to plunge ahead. I think I may know who murdered her. Huh? Her father's eyes grew wide. He leaned forward over the desktop. What are you saying? Roxy had figured out a way to tell her father the story without revealing that she had broken into the house. Ursula and I know this guy, she started. His name is Lee Bloom. He moved to Rocky Shores last fall. Mr. Nelson's eyes were riveted on Roxy. Her legs suddenly felt weak and rubbery. She stepped around to the front of the chair and sat down. Last night I dropped by Lee's house, she continued. He lives on Seabreeze. I just stopped by to say hi, but the house was totally dark, and as I stepped up to the front door, I heard a girl scream. The front door was open, Mr. Nelson asked. Roxy nodded. Yeah, it was open. I stood on the front stoop and I heard a girl scream. And I heard Lee. He and the girl were fighting. Mr. Nelson scribbled a note on his pad. Then he looked up at her thoughtfully. They were arguing or fighting? It started out as arguing, Roxy told him. Then I heard the girl yell, let go of me. Then I heard a crash, and she screamed, this time really frightened. Then I heard real fighting. And what did you do? Mr. Nelson demanded, scribbling more notes on the pad. Did you call out or try to stop them or anything? Roxy stared back at him. She lowered her eyes. No, I ran away. You didn't think about calling the police? Roxy continued to avoid his eyes. No, I was scared and I didn't know if it was really a serious fight or not. She glanced up to see her father staring at her, his eyes narrowed, his lips tight. I suppose I should have done something, Roxy said quietly, but I was scared. I didn't think he was going to kill her. Her voice broke. She sucked in a deep breath and held it, struggling not to burst out crying. Why didn't you tell me about it when you got home? Mr. Nelson demanded softly, twirling the pen between his thumb and forefinger. You got home really late, Roxy replied in a quivering voice, and I didn't know if I should bother you with it or not. I just didn't know what to do. Then when I heard this morning that they found that girl's body... Mr. Nelson climbed up slowly from the desk chair. He stepped around the desk in front of Roxy and put a gentle hand on top of her hair. the way he had always calmed her down when she was a kid. "Are you okay, Roxy?" he asked softly. She nodded. "I guess." "We have to go to the police," he said. "We have to go tell Chief Harms." Roxy nodded solemnly. They drove in silence through the rain. The steady click of the windshield wipers and the splash of the tires against the puddled road were the only sounds as Roxy slumped in the seat beside her father. The Roxy Shores police station was a small, one-story, white-clapboard building behind the post office. 2 black and white cruisers were parked out front. Roxy followed her father across the muddy parking lot, ducking her head from the cold rain. Mr. Nelson pushed open the wooden door and held it open for her. They stepped into a brightly lit reception area. A police radio crackled in the background. A young officer with short, blonde hair sat at a metal desk, working on a crossword puzzle. He glanced up as Roxy and her father approached. "Hey, Nelson, how's it going?" The Rocky Shores police all knew Roxy's father. He was the local lawyer people always called when they had any kind of legal trouble. "I'm not sure, Ferris," Mr. Nelson replied grimly. "Is Harms back there?" He gestured toward the back hall. "Roxy and I have a story for him." "I'll check," Officer Ferris said. He picked up the phone receiver, pushed a few buttons, muttered something, then nodded to Roxy's father. "Go on back, but don't get too close. He's in a bad mood and he might bite." Roxy followed her father down the narrow hall. It opened into a row of 3 offices with frosted glass walls. A tall, red-faced man with wavy gray hair and bright blue eyes stepped out of the center office. "Hey, Nelson," he said. His voice was deep. He didn't smile. "Harms, you know my daughter Roxy, right?" Mr. Nelson asked. The police chief nodded solemnly. His blue eyes locked on Roxy. He raised a pair of silvery handcuffs in one hand. "Roxy, I'm going to have one of my men read you your rights," he said without any emotion at all. "And I'm placing you under arrest for murder." Chapter 14. Roxy gasped, her breath caught in her throat. The handcuffs dangled in front of her face. "Harms, don't you ever get tired of that old joke?" Mr. Nelson demanded angrily. The police chief laughed. His blue eyes twinkled. "It gets him every time." He smiled at Roxy. "Scared you, huh?" Roxy managed a half-hearted smile. What a dumb joke, she thought with some bitterness. Her legs were still shaking. "We cops have to have some laughs," Chief Harms said. Then his smile faded. "It's been a rough day." "That's why we're here," Mr. Nelson told him. "Roxy may have some information for you about that girl's murder." Chief Harms' lips formed an O of surprise. His eyes burned into Roxy's. "Come into my office," he said in a low voice. "All seriousness now, both of you." "They said they were going to pick up Lee at his house and take him to the station to question him," Roxy said into the phone. Wow. Shauna on the other end of the line sounded stunned. A tense silence. Then Shauna said, "I knew Lee had a temper, but I never thought—" Her voice trailed off. "I had to tell them the whole story 3 times, Roxy told her friend, tangling and untangling the phone cord around her wrist as she talked. "They asked me the same questions over and over." The breeze through her bedroom window was cold and damp. The white curtains flapped in front of the gray evening sky. The rain had finally stopped. "The police promised they wouldn't tell Lee that I told them about last night," Roxy continued. She felt a knot in her stomach tighten. She hadn't been able to calm down all day. Even telling the whole thing to Shauna wasn't helping. "They promised they'd leave me out of it." "But what if Lee saw you?" Shauna asked shrilly. "What if Lee saw you run out of his house? Then he'd know that you were the one who told the police. He'd know that you were the witness." Roxy swallowed hard. He could come after you next," Shauna stammered. "Thanks for trying to cheer me up, Shauna," Roxy muttered dryly. "I only meant—" Shauna started. "The police won't let Lee go," Roxy interrupted. "He killed that girl, Shauna. He murdered her. They won't just ask him a few questions and then send him home. They'll arrest him. They'll lock him up." "I hope so," Shauna said, sighing. "Did you tell Ursula? Have you talked to her?" "I called her house a few minutes ago," Roxy replied, tensely wrapping the cord around her wrist. "Her mother said she was asleep because of the pills the doctor gave her, but I guess her back is better. She's going to work tomorrow. You know, in the office at school. I'll see her after my French class." "Wow, Ursula will be surprised," Shauna murmured. "Yeah," Roxy agreed. "To put it mildly, she won't believe we made a bet to go out with a murderer." "She won't believe she lost the bet," Shauna explained. "We both lost," Roxy replied, feeling a cold chill run down her back. "Did you really see the dead girl?" Shauna asked. "Did you get a good look at her, Roxy?" What did she look like? Pale, Roxy replied softly. Very pale. Roxy found Ursula at her desk in the school office the next morning. She was wearing a blue tank top over white tennis shorts. She had a matching blue band in her hair. How's the back? Roxy asked, stepping up to the long counter. Ursula finished typing something, then glanced up. Much better? Still a little stiff, but I couldn't even walk yesterday? I called you twice, Roxy said. I know. Sorry I was so out of it. The muscle relaxants were unbelievable. I just conked right out. Roxy glanced around the office. A girl and a boy she didn't recognize were typing away at keyboards on desks against the back wall. Can you get away? Roxy asked, lowering her voice. I have to talk with you. Ursula glanced up at the wall clock. It was a little after 11. I guess I could take an early lunch? She opened the top desk drawer and pulled out a brown paper lunch bag. Back in half an hour, she called to the other two workers. They didn't even look up. Ursula's eyes narrowed as she studied Roxy. Why the serious face? You'll see, Roxy told her. You'll see. They stepped out into the bright morning sunshine and followed a path behind the school building. It led them past the baseball diamonds, where a group of junior high kids were playing a noisy game of softball. Beyond the grassy green soccer field, the path led over some low, rocky dunes to the beach. Roxy sat down on a flat rock at the edge of the beach and stared out at the blue-green water. Although the storm clouds had disappeared, the morning air still carried a chill. Roxy could see a few sunbathers at the other end of the beach near the small boat dock, but this section was deserted. Ursula lowered herself onto a rock across from Roxy and pulled out a container of blueberry yogurt from her lunch bag. As she began to slowly spoon it into her mouth, Roxy told her the whole story from the beginning. Ursula interrupted when Roxy told her about sneaking into the side door of Lee's house to try to find a shark's cap. I don't believe this, she exclaimed. You cheater! I don't believe that Miss Straight Arrow of Rocky Shores was cheating on our bet. That's something I would do. Both girls laughed. Roxy knew that Ursula wouldn't be angry. Ursula was so competitive, she could appreciate someone else being competitive too. Their smiles faded and their expressions grew solemn as Roxy continued her story. When she finished, Ursula stared at her open mouth, the container of yogurt only half finished in her lap. Oh, man, Ursula murmured. Roxy, you poor thing, you must have been so frightened. Ursula let the yogurt container fall to the ground as she jumped to her feet. She moved quickly to Roxy and wrapped her in a comforting hug. Roxy felt surprised by her friend's outburst of emotion. Ursula usually remained as cool and aloof as her looks. Roxy also felt grateful. And you don't know if Lee saw you run out or not? Ursula asked, moving back but holding on to Roxy's shoulders. Roxy shook her head. Thank goodness the police have got him, Ursula exclaimed. She let go of Roxy and shook her head. What a horrible story. I can't believe I was out on the boat with him just the day before, all alone, she shuddered. Shauna warned us he had a bad temper, Roxy said quietly. Who was the girl? Ursula demanded, bending to pick up the fallen yogurt container. She stuffed it back in the bag. Did you recognize her? Who was she? Roxy shrugged. Not from Rocky Shores, I'm pretty sure. It could have been me, Ursula cried, and then she added, or you? I know, Roxy said, feeling the knot in her stomach tighten. They probably have Lee in the detention center at Rockford, Ursula said, gazing out at a sailboat tilting far on the horizon. We'll never see him again? Roxy wrapped her arms around her chest, as if shielding herself. She stared out at the gleaming white sail. Ursula glanced at her watch. Oh man, I'm late. I've got to run. She squeezed Roxy's hand. You're okay, huh? Roxy nodded. Yeah, I guess. I'll call you later. Stepping over the rocks, Ursula climbed the low dune and hurried back toward the school. Roxy stood with her arms crossed over her chest, gazing out at the water until the sailboat faded from view. Then she lowered herself back onto the flat rock. The bright sunlight and cool air felt soothing on her face. She watched two gulls picking at a brown clump of seaweed that had washed ashore. Roxy could feel herself starting to relax. Ursula had been so understanding, so sympathetic. It helped to have such a good friend. A shadow slid over her. The air suddenly felt cooler. She turned to see what had blocked the sunlight, and stared up at Lee. He stood above her on a jutting rock, hands at the waist of his jeans. His navy blue t-shirt fluttered in the wind. He glared down at her with narrowed eyes, his black hair over his forehead. The sunlight caught the small silver ring in his ear, making it glow like a diamond. Roxy gasped. Why wasn't he locked up? Why did the police let him go? How long had he been standing there? Did he hear her conversation with Ursula? Frozen on the low rock, caught in the darkness of his shadow, she watched a strange smile form slowly on his face. Roxy, Lee said softly, I saw you. Chapter 15. I saw you, Lee repeated, stepping down beside her. Roxy jumped to her feet. The strange, leering smile remained on his lips, but his eyes were dark and serious. Deadly serious. A wave of panic swept over Roxy. Her eyes darted to the beach, searching for an easy escape route. I saw you on your way to school this morning, Lee said, bending to brush sand off the leg of his jeans. Didn't you hear me calling you? He deliberately tried to scare me, Roxy thought. He saw me at his house Saturday night. Now he's teasing me, torturing me. Or is he? She eyed him warily, trying to read his expression. What thoughts were lurking behind those cold, dark eyes? I didn't hear you, she managed to choke out. She shoved her hands into the pockets of her tan shorts. You're in summer school? He asked. He picked up a smooth, oval-shaped pebble and heaved it toward the water. It hit the ground at the shore edge and bounced into a low blue wave. Yeah, French, Roxy replied uncomfortably. Why is he here? What does he want? Why does he have that odd smile plastered on his face? He brushed his dark hair under his cap. The smile finally faded. He picked up another smooth rock. Is your friend in summer school too? Ursula? Is that why she hurried away? So he saw us, Roxy realized, feeling a cold chill down her back. He saw us talking. Did he hear what I was saying? Or did he know what I was telling Ursula without having to hear it? Ursula works, Roxy told him curtly. I've got to go. I'm late. Is he going to let me go? Is he going to grab me now? Is he going to kill me too? Lee's eyes narrowed. Before Roxy could back away, he pulled his hand from his jeans pocket and reached for her throat.